This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics. I'm Roby Brock, joined by John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Good to see you as always. You've been getting your newspapering on this past week. You've had two big events talk about the future of journalism. I saw Walter Hussman came to a Life Quest event that you had going on, and then you were talking to an empty room in another one, but I think there were some people in the back of it.
My Life Quest Classic, I have about 350 seniors, retirees who meet to hear me talk about behind the headlines and talk about politics. But I brought in Walter Hussman as a guest because I thought this is interesting. We're getting ready to have one of the nation's boldest attempts at digital conversion of newsprint to this iPad thing, and it was well attended, well received, interesting study in how print has died.
350 new subscriptions?
Well,
digital?
We couldn't sell subscriptions because it was in a church, but we could convert you if you were already a subscriber. And a lot of people were lining up to get a little tutorial.
There's a lot of conversion that goes on at churches.
There is. This was probably more conversion than they'd normally had, being Presbyterian. But it was a good program. And then the other thing, Journalism Day at UCA, they invited me to come be the keynoter to some high school kids, and I tried to explain to a pretty good assembly of kids that it's not, print is dead, you don't know what it is, and it's gone, basically. But this newspaper here, this front page represents some journalistic principles, and here's what they are, and they've got to survive from this transition from paper on the porch to words on the screen. And I think I caught one kid paying attention. I really do.
If you just converted one child into the journalism field, you've done your Lord's work for the week.
I've not done that child any favors, but I've done the Lord's work. Yes, that's right.
Let's turn our attention to some things happening in Arkansas politics. We talked about them last week. They actually happened for a change.
Right.
First of all, you had on Friday the ouster of Representative Mickey Gates.
Right.
88-4. I think there was some question as to whether or not they might expel him or not. There was a nose count of under 60 at one point in time. 88-4 is fairly emphatic. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, because as you say, we'd seen these polls that the press had conducted. Turns out maybe people didn't want to tell the press. This was a sensitive matter, and just I'll vote if I have to. Maybe this thing won't come to pass. But a case like that usually means they've got enough votes, so any who weren't going to vote probably will vote that way anyway. And also, it's hard to defend voting to keep in the House of Representatives a man who blatantly had not paid his taxes and was somewhat defiant about it. In the end, once it goes to the floor and the Speaker's serious about it, we all thought it was going to pass. We were just somewhat leery of these vote counts, and it turned out it was overwhelming and should have been.
I talked to a couple of legislators who said the Gates speech on the floor pushed them from maybe a little undecided to definitely I'm going to vote to oust this guy. That he did not do himself any favors by the speech that he gave.
No, and I was out of town doing my Save the Newspapers speaking tour, but I heard it fell somewhat flat, including some attempt at humor, which was inappropriate to attempt and not well delivered. Would that be a way to describe it?
I think that would be accurate.
Okay.
So.
Having not seen it, I described it perfectly. Yeah. Were you there?
This is frequent for you.
Right.
I was actually up at UCA at a groundbreaking, but listening to it on a phone and via Twitter. I was with the former Speaker of the House, Jeremy Gillum, as a matter of fact, was listening to it as well. But I missed your speech over in the journalism class.
It was excellent. And this had to happen, and it's good that it happened. You know.
Let's talk about what happened the day before, and that is a marathon State Board of Education meeting. I think technically resulted in the Little Rock School District coming back to local control. There is some argument that that is not the case. Why don't you help us with that subtlety there?
There is great distrust between local public school advocates in Little Rock and the State Board of Education for good reason. The local public school advocates advocate for the city of Little Rock and its regular public schools. The State Board of Education and Asa Hutchinson administration are heavily influenced by business-minded reformers, such as the Walton Foundation, who want to do some sort of competitive business-oriented reforms. It's a great chasm. There's great distrust. And the great thing that happened is the city of Little Rock, its boosters, galvanized for the public schools. I mean, they had, I'm told, a couple thousand or more at Central High for a rally. You had the city board, as we discussed last week, and Mayor Scott, for the first time ever, sticking its neck out for the public schools with a plan. And the state board was also beginning to get bad national attention on this notion that they were separating, resegregating a school district that only happens to have a place in history for the struggle to desegregate. With all of that happening, the state board retreated on this plan to return part of the district to local control, but the failing schools would stay under some sort of unknown, different management. They retreated from that. But then they turned around at the end of the meeting and killed the local teachers union, fomenting employee unrest. And then there are those who read the details and they say, you know, they're keeping Little Rock under a designation as a Category 5 distressed district, which means even after they turn it back, they can take it back again. And it's just a matter of distrust. It is, however, I'm trying to explain to these folks, the state had all the cards. They've got the state constitution, they've got the state law, they can take over a district. Take your incremental victories where they are and work for another one. I think that needs to be Little Rock's attitude, because we will have school board elections in November 20, and we'll have a chance to pursue have a chance to pursue and implement local control and start these community schools in these distressed areas. And they need to be about trying to do that, and the state's going to do what the state's going to do. But they'll be less likely to re-intervene if Little Rock effectively governs itself, and that's the challenge. Anyway, you had something else you want to ask?
Yeah, well, let's talk about where you see those school board elections going in 2020. You talked about the union busting vote there. The contract was set to expire at the end of October, at the end of this month anyway.
Well,
so,
yeah, but which to me means, since you're in a state of transition, just extend it until the new board is in effect. But that's what they deliberately did not do.
Does the school board elections in 2020, do you believe they become a referendum on the teachers union?
Not altogether. In part, I think that'll be a driving force for the Teachers Association and teachers in getting involved in politics. But I'm told by political people who are veterans of local public school issues, they're saying these are the biggest school board elections since '59, and that there'll be a lot of money spent by the business reform candidates and by local public school advocates, and that this is going to be big, and we still don't know how the districts will be drawn. Under the reconstitution of the district, we're going to have new districts. Will there be at-large elections? Will there be districts that will be neighborhood-based, and what will the neighborhoods be? All of that is up in the air. But I told somebody yesterday, the school board elections in Little Rock will rival Trump-Warren on the November 2020 ballot.
You're already hedging your bet there. It's a little early.
Well, you know, or Trump-Biden.
Do you?
Or Pence, Buttigieg. That's one I'm not counting on necessarily.
So sticking with the Little Rock School District here, do you think there will be crowded school board elections? Yes. And do you think the caliber of the candidates will be something that we haven't seen in many decades?
I think there will be crowded fields. I think the quality of the candidates will be strong. I think it is simply impossible to say how that works out. If local public school advocates run against each other, maybe some of the business type people can squeeze in and get elected in some of the districts. It really sort of needs to be coordinated by teachers, advocates. Yeah, because
I think they're independent seats. They're not Democrat or Republican, and I think a plurality wins.
Right. So that's exactly right. So there's a lot at stake, and it's a chance. It is simply a chance. With all this angst and worry, I know, and it's well founded, there's a chance for Little Rock to really do something. There's also a chance for this all to wash away into more of the same. And it all hinges largely on those elections and the attitude of the state in letting Little Rock have a shot at running it locally.
All right, lastly, you've made some predictions here. You made a prediction about 2 weeks ago that you would be doing some dancing back here when the Razorbacks won a football game.
It wasn't a prediction, it was a lie.
I think that you might escape this entire season without dancing.
Are you bringing up the Razorback situation?
Would you like to make a prediction for this week's Auburn game? What do you think the
I
final
predict
score will
that
be?
this week in the Arkansas versus Auburn game, Auburn will score as many points as possible because Gus Malzahn will want to. Auburn has a great defense. They've got an elaborate running attack. They've got a freshman quarterback who most likely will emerge after next week as a Heisman contender, because whoever is the quarterback for the team that opposes the Razorbacks goes into the Heisman discussion the next Monday, even if he is a wide receiver and third string who's never played quarterback, even if he's just come out of the band and taken over at quarterback for the opposing team. So I think, I wonder what the line is. Have you checked to see? Are you a line?
I have not checked, but we'll look at it when
It's a home game.
here.
It's probably the best local on-campus conference game. The 69 Razorbacks are having their reunion. It's a moment of great tradition. It would be an occasion in a better world for the Razorbacks to really put up a fight.
Like a 1981 Arkansas-Texas 42-11 stomping or something like that.
You know,
right?
this is just a remarkable thing. To have lived as long as I had and spanned the 64 Razorbacks and the 69 Razorbacks and what's going on now. Did you see, the big loss wasn't at Kentucky. It was moments after the game. A 4-star, 320-pound offensive lineman in Texas announced on Twitter, "Don't hate me, but I'm reopening my recruiting." He had previously committed. You know, when you sort of establish yourself as the doormat, that tends to reinforce itself. And it's difficult. You can be a great recruiter, but it gets more difficult to recruit when it doesn't look like you're going to have a competitive program. So it's a near crisis point for Arkansas football.
Saturday Down South ranked the best to worst SEC football teams, and Vanderbilt was still lower than Arkansas. So
Yeah, well, didn't they lose to something like UNLV or something like that?
Well, we still have Vandy.
Only on that basis. But I wouldn't. If Arkansas had to line up against Vanderbilt, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't
chance
bet a
bet.
dance on it, would you?
No, I would not.
All
No, I
right.
would not.
He's John Brummett with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, as always.
Woo pig suey.
Good to see you.
Do they still say that?
Yes, they
Okay,
do.
good.
All right. That's all for today's program. I'm Roby Brock. We'll see you next time.
You'll find us at the end of a lot of long country roads, covering over 60% of the great state of Arkansas. Our 17 electric distribution cooperatives are working day and night to provide reliable, affordable power to over 500,000 homes, farms, and businesses, just like yours. The Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas, your local energy partners.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America, moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.